And what he did was, at times, impersonate Ohtani in conversations with bank officials.
We are back with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal. There he is. Yeah, Todd Father's excited to see you. Happy Friday to you, Ken. I do want to start right away with the latest on Ippei Mizuhara. So your show did a great job yesterday breaking down the situation at the moment. There have been some updates since then when the feds put out that long report. So first off, what was your reaction when you saw all of the details and the bets and more money being placed and stolen from Shohei than we initially heard?
Well, I've been hearing for weeks that it was a lot more than 4.5 million and couldn't nail it down. I'm sure other reporters were hearing the same. Then to hear the number yesterday, more than 16 million, that sort of matched what I was kind of gathering initially. So that aspect of it did not necessarily surprise me, even though it's a big number. And even though when that amount of money is taken from an individual, that's a shocking thing. As for the rest of it, I was surprised by the level of detail that the federal government presented in its case, its complaint against Ippei Mizuhara. And we'll never know perhaps the entire truth, right? But as I wrote today, this is probably as good as it's going to get if you're a Shohei Ohtani fan and you want to see him exonerated, if you're Shohei Ohtani and want to be exonerated. Yes, you can poke holes here and there, I guess. It's kind of hard to see them. I had some people comment on my article raising different things. I went to check the complaint, the 37-page complaint in each case, and wasn't coming up with what these people were saying. Imagine that, guys. So there are going to be people who always believe something was amiss here. And for all I know, who knows? Maybe something happened that was not outlined here. But based on what we know and based on who was doing the investigating, not Major League Baseball, which would leave them open to much skepticism because of Ohtani's value to the sport, but it's the federal government. It's 3 different agencies combining to compile all of this information on just what Ippei did. It seems to me to be the closest to an open and shut case as a non-legal expert that you can get. But we'll see how he pleads, and we'll see ultimately how this works out. Of course, the New York Times reported on Wednesday that Ippei was negotiating a plea deal of sorts, and that would likely lead to a lesser sentence. We heard the maximum sentence for this is 30 years. So for all the people saying, well, Ippei's just taking the fall for Shohei, if you're going to go to jail for a length of time, and it certainly seems like even if it's not 30 years, it will be a length of time, not 6 months, then that kind of theory kind of goes out the window.
You're going to think maybe I'm crazy, but like you saw the amount of money he took, right? You have all the details. I don't know the top dollar, whatever it was. It was really a lot of money. How does he get away with that? Like getting all that money out. It said he made over 19,000 bets. Like any bank or any place is going to be like, wouldn't they be skeptical about the whole situation?
Well, Todd, it's a very fair question, and it's all addressed in the complaint. And what he did was, at times, impersonate Ohtani in conversations with bank officials. He had access to that account, that one particular account where Ohtani's baseball paychecks were being deposited. And he also told Ohtani's advisors, his professional advisors, his agent, his financial people, Shohei wants that account private. So if Shohei's not getting the notifications, if Ippei's the one getting the notifications and handling things on his own, you can see how this can happen. And people might say, well, Ohtani's an idiot. Ohtani's naive. Ohtani's careless. All of that might be true. Wouldn't be the first individual to kind of be involved in such a thing. Wouldn't be the first sports superstar, as I pointed out in what I wrote today. This happens. And I'm not saying it's normal or anything like that, but John Elway had financial issues. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bobby Orr, the list goes on. And if you trust someone to the extent that Ohtani seemingly trusted Ippei, certainly this can happen. And it seems bizarre to the average person. It certainly seems bizarre to me. But at the same time, the way it was laid out by the government, with the evidence that they presented, that they said they have, it's kind of a situation where you start to understand just exactly what it was happening here.
Ken, we covered this earlier on the show. Would love to get your take on this front too, because you speak to people around the game every day, and you know how it is with like water cooler talk. Like this is one of those topics that comes up when you're catching up with someone. I've had it the last couple of weeks too, where they're like, "You seeing this latest update on Ippei?" So my question is, learning from the experience, how do you think teams react to this? Do they say, hey, we need to do better background checks on employees that are closer to our players? Do we need to rethink how the interpreter process works? You know, what can a team learn from this? I'm sure there are executives that are saying, hey, next time we have a situation where someone's coming over, we need to make sure they're in a good place. Like everyone needs to kind of pick up the pieces here.
Scott, agreed. And I am certain and have talked to some people in the game about what they will do going forward. And yes, background checks. Yes, I would imagine the next time an interpreter is presented to a team, they're going to have more questions than maybe the Angels had initially about Ippei. Sam Blum of The Athletic has since written about how there are inaccuracies in Ippei's biography that probably should have been caught if you were doing a real background check, if you were serious about it. So I would expect there to be an effect here and an impact on the way teams conduct themselves in the future, and maybe even guidelines that MLB puts in place for interpreters in the future and how they are given their roles and all of those kinds of things.
I want you to overreact to the series that you're doing this weekend, okay? Where the current world champions and the previous year's world champions are now lining up, where they are so far in the season. I don't want you to say, not one time, it's early in the season, okay? I want you to overreact to where they're at and moving forward from there.
Eric, I like the question. I like the demand. It's not one I usually get, but from the Astros perspective, my concern is their bullpen in front of Abreu, Presley, and Hader. And that's something that they let go this offseason, and I don't believe took seriously enough just what they were losing with Maton and Neris and the others that left as well. They lost a lot of innings out of that bullpen. Ryan Stanek was another one. So that's a problem for them. Abreu, Jose Abreu, the way he's hitting, that's a potential problem too. Though they're getting men on base. They just aren't hitting with runners in scoring position. I would expect that to change. Their offense still, in my mind, is going to be pretty good. But the real problem is, right now, that they have 4 starting pitchers on the disabled list, or the injured list. It's Verlander, it's Framber, Valdez, it's McCullers, and Garcia, who will be available later in the season, most likely. So that's causing them to reach down to a guy like Spencer Arrighetti, or top prospect, but he had a tough time in his debut. It's forcing them to ask more of Hunter Brown. And Hunter Brown has had a couple of rough starts. It's only his second season. So that's where they are. And I am concerned about the Astros. It's going to end at some point, this unbelievable run that they've had. So, yeah, there are some legitimate concerns. Now, the Rangers, they've got some guys missing too, right? Nathaniel Lowe at first, Josh Young at third. They've got some starting pitchers that they're waiting on. Lorenzen first will be back, then Scherzer, then DeGrom, hopefully, and Tyler Mahle actually right before DeGrom, if it all works out the way they intend. Once that process starts and once they get some of those guys back in the mix and once Young and Lowe are back, I would think they're going to stabilize. They're kind of in a rough spot right now because of the injuries that they've withstood, especially on the position side. The pitching stuff they knew was pretty much happening. They're going to be there, in my opinion. They're still one of the best teams in the American League, maybe the best team in the American League. But they're going to have to wait for their pitching to come back. And then, at that point, if you start to see Lorenzen and Scherzer, and then down the line, Mahle and DeGrom, then you can do what you did last year. Heaney and Dunning in the bullpen if you need to. Maybe even John Gray in the bullpen. You have options. You have ways to go. So I am less inclined to overreact to them than I would be the Astros. The Astros thing, I don't know. It just doesn't seem good right now. Maybe once the pitching gets back, everything settles down. I can certainly see that happening, but I'm a little more concerned with them.
One more for you from me on the Rangers. How does a team figure out getting another World Series title after winning last year? It hasn't happened in a really long time. I think the number one reason for it is pitching. And it even ties into the pitching injury chatter that has come into center stage, this week and last week with more of these top dogs going down. So I'm wondering if someone like Chris Young, who clearly values pitching, just keeps piling on, is already thinking about more pitchers that he wants to acquire at the deadline. Even if he ends up having too many starters, who cares? Those guys go to the bullpen and we say, hey, let's try and win another World Series. So stacking arms, in my mind, is a key there. What do you think about their pitching depth on that front?
Well, we'll see where they are come the deadline, Scott. But by that point, in theory, Lorenzen should be a part of the rotation or the bullpen, however you want to use him. Scherzer should be back. They're looking at early to mid-May for him right now. And at the deadline, if Malley and DeGrom aren't back by then, they will at least have a good feel on when they are returning. And could there be possibly a better deadline addition than a healthy Jacob DeGrom? I don't think so. So I don't know that they're going to need starting pitching this time because they have these pieces coming into play. But we'll see where we are in July. It's a long way away. I mean, it seems like we've played a lot already. There's been a lot happening in the sport, and it's April 12th. So I would express that, or I would suggest that we need to wait before we start looking what their needs might be. It might be starting pitching, Scott. They might have 3 more guys go down. I don't know. But certainly Chris Young has been aggressive, and I would expect he'd be aggressive again.
So we have Kratzy, sorry. Go ahead, Bubba.
No. I understand that there is one of my fellow colleagues, AJ Przinsky, and you had a nice text exchange that you're willing to share with us coming up to your game.
Here it goes, Eric, because the other day I said that AJ tries to keep me off the air, and he viciously and fervently and vehemently denied it. Here's proof. Conversation with our producer. Brian's a producer. Only thing I need is to make sure Ken never gets on the air. Thank you, appreciate that. And I said, LOL, let's just hope AJ figures out who Ronel Blanco is by Saturday he's pitching in our game. It's all in good fun. And by the way, because this is another frequent AJ complaint, I'm sitting in a hotel room. AJ is in the same hotel. He's not in some Super 8, and I'm not in some fancy place. We're in the same spot.
Wow.
Hey, Ken, you know what you need to do? You need to take your trash can, fill it up with water,
halfway,
lean it up against his door, and knock on his door and let it dump into his room. Do it.
Given the fact that AJ, I don't know, has got probably 80 or 100 pounds on me. Nah, maybe not that many. I don't know.
He'll never know it's you. He'll never know it's you.
Know. He'll figure it out.
Awesome. Hey, I want he puts that water on the door. Remember, the only way to make it stop, you have to open your door and quickly close it so it would pop back up. Unless you'd have a puddle of water on your floor.
Anyway. I can see AJ doing that to me. I have to be on guard here.
Yep. You wouldn't be able to get out of your room.
Just look under the door. Just look under the door before you go out, okay? You'll be able to see the shadow.
Appreciate the advice, Eric. Thanks.
Yep.
The Jackson Holiday effect coming up, man. This guy has been all we've talked about.
Oh, wait, hold on. Todd, your mic just went crazy. Hold on, dude. We're going to reset you. Wait, give us one sec. I know what you're going to ask, but it happens, dude. Your mic went crazy. There you go. They muted you for a sec. Here, I can pass the baton for the last question here. Jackson Holiday effect. I mean, it's been a couple games. We just had Corbin Burns on before you, and he told us how he'll talk to him eventually about nerves, but there's so many damn cameras in his face, especially in Boston because they do the documentary stuff up there. He's like, I'm just going to leave him for a few because I don't want all the cameras in my face. But what have you seen so far?
I see a kid who's just comfortable playing. Now, he hasn't had many results so far, but he certainly doesn't look overmatched. His plate discipline comes as advertised. He is going to be a good player. And while the results might not be there yet, I'm not worried about him. No one with the Orioles is worried about him. I don't know that anyone should be worried about him. What is so striking about that team right now is for all the hype that Jackson Holiday is getting, and rightly so, former number 1 pick in the country, in these 2 nights in Boston, they got a game-winning homer, or go-ahead homer, I should say, from Westberg, who was another former number 1 pick, 30th overall. And Colton Cowser had one of the great series in Orioles history at Fenway Park during their history at Fenway. 10 RBIs. You saw the 2 homers last night. He, too, was a number 1 pick, 5th overall. It is stunning to me, not just how many of these guys they've hit on. And I know they tanked, and I know that's how they got the high picks. I get it. We've talked about that, and justifiably so. But they hit on these picks. They developed them. In some cases, they weren't in the minors very long, understood. But it's really impressive. And the fact that they've got more coming, Heston Kierstad and Kobe Mayo, Kyle Stowers, all these guys, it's just kind of astonishing. And if they get to the deadline and they need pitching, which would not surprise any of us, right? Man, they've got the ability to go get anybody they want with these players that they have both on the roster and in the system. And the way Grayson Rodriguez pitched last night and the promise that he has, you combine him with Burns and Bradish is coming back, then you go get one more. It could be a pretty fearsome looking group.
Yeah, agreed. And, I know there's been a lot of tanking in our game over the past 10, 15 years. They've got to win titles, at least 1 or 2. But if they do, this could be one of the better, tank rebuilds that we've seen.
Well, the Astros were the model for that, right, Scott?
Yeah.
The Astros did it the best. And not every team that tanked has had that kind of success. People seem to forget that. And I will point out, too, that with the draft lottery, you can't pull the stunts that the Orioles and Astros pulled. And they were actually going for a very much desired result. So that's healthy for the game. That's a good thing that this is no longer allowed in the same way. But we have to understand this is how these teams got there. But even with all those picks, you still have to go get the right guys. And yeah, I know they drafted 1-1 with Adley Rutschman and with Jackson Holliday, but Gunnar Henderson was a second rounder. Looks like he's going to be one of the best players in the game. And not one of these guys was 1-1. Kudos to them, man. They've done it great.
Yeah, I know we talk about the White Sox a lot on this show. If you look at some of their recent first-round picks, like they have not hit on them. It's been guys that either don't make it or they've just been okay in the bigs, backup players, whatever it is. And then you look at Baltimore. So, yeah, it's a thing. You got to nail it. Ken, have fun. Good luck. I am excited to watch this one this weekend and see the back and forth with AJ. I know he's been talking about it for 2 weeks. So enjoy the series.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Ken Rosenthal, FT Senior Insider, twice a week, Fair Territory. Next one comes out on Monday. Yesterday's is great. Check that out after this on YouTube or wherever you get your pods. Just type in Fair Territory. It's there for you.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.